we're driving through Abernethy forest and we're going to have a look at a couple of the areas that we've been managing for Capercaillie. So first we're going to go to an area that we've been grazing with cattle for the last 4 years. And then we're gonna have a little look at a bit that we've not been doing any management in. So it's our kind of control plot that we can compare to the managed areas. And then we're going to have a look at an area that we've been cutting. We've been using a robo cutter in for the last 3 or 4 years, a kind of bit each year. Because of the time of the year, we're kind of in the breeding season. Capercaillie hens at about now should be going down onto nests, laying their first eggs. We'll just stay near to the tracks. We can see some of the grazed areas and the cut areas just off the edge of some of our access tracks. So we'll not go deep into the forest. We don't want to disturb any of the birds that we're trying to help. So on one side of the track here, we've got an area that's been unmanaged recently. So it's really just tall heather with some tall bits of blaeberry. A lot of Abernethy is really dominated by heather, and heather's really important. It's important for Capercaillie and lots of other things, but it can grow too tall and too thick and dominate out other species. Often we think of this place as pristine and kind of ancient and natural, and it's more pristine than a lot of places in the UK and the world, but it's still lost a lot of what would have been here naturally. So naturally in here there would have been boars, there would have been aurochs, there would have been moose. They'd be hammering this vegetation. This heather that we see down here, they'd be eating it, they'd be trampling it, they'd be digging it up. So although it looks kind of natural, it really is a long way away from the diversity that would have been here, thousands of years ago. And what the cattle do is they really mimic some of that impact from these big large herbivores that are no longer here. They have a similar effect on the vegetation and kind of recreate that naturalness that we've lost in the forest. We've just come across into this boggy area, a little bog in the woods, and but by putting the cows into some of these wetter areas, they've knocked back the heather. They've opened up kind of access to bits of water, and they've reinvigorated the cotton grass. Capercaillie hens will flock to these boggy areas to feed up on all this really rich kind of superfood before the nesting season. Well, there's a couple of bits of Capercaillie poo that we just found in this bit of bog, and Capapoo's quite interesting in its own sort of special way, in that it can tell you quite a bit about what the Caper's been up to. So there's 2 different kind of types of poo, I suppose, here. This one's kind of more normal. It's going to mostly be made of pine needles. This one's full of cotton grass seeds, and that's why it's darker in colour, and you can kind of just make out some of these little seeds. And this shows you that a bird's been in this bog feeding on this cotton grass. I'm fairly sure this is a hen, Capercaillie. There's a few bits of pine needle in there as well, and this time of year she's building condition to get ready for laying eggs, sitting on the nest. So this is like a nice little carpet here of blaeberry, and this has come back through really following the grazing. So there's a lot of areas like this in the grazed area which there was blaeberry here already, but it was maybe very tall, or it was maybe shaded out with heather, and the cattle have really opened it back up again, and then we have this kind of fresh regrowth of blaeberry, and this is really important kind of sugar packed food for Capercaillie adults. But then probably the most important thing about the blaeberry is that you get lots of caterpillars on the blaeberry leaves. So the caterpillars are a really important food source for chicks early in their life. So the chicks, when they hatch out, they spend the first kind of 3 or 4 weeks really just eating insects. and the caterpillars on blaeberry, particularly on fresh young growth of blaeberry, are probably the most important food source for them. When we started this project, we really wanted to find a local grazier who wanted to work with us to help Capercaillie, but also to benefit their business. And we've been doing that now with a local farmer who's been here grazing his cattle for 5 years and increasing the numbers each year. And we think that for projects like this to be sustainable, it's really important to work with the local community. And I think more than that is he's gone out into the community to his friends, other farmers, and said, hey, this is working well. The RSPB are all right. And we've had other farmers then get in touch and show interest in grazing cattle. So this year we'll be working with 3 local farmers, local graziers, not just for Capercaillie, but helping black grouse, helping some rare plant communities, some rare fungi. And that's nice that it's growing, and that's only happened really because of that, relationship building with the local farmer. I mean, it's quite brutal, to be honest. It's a big, diesel-powered machine with a flail mower on the front. This was an area that had, again, a lot of heather, quite tall heather in. The objective of it was to cut that back down to the ground, knowing that the blaeberry would grow back through. So yeah, it looked quite heavy work, quite brutal, but it's coming back really nicely now. I come back to this bit every year, and the first year it's just kind of bare, and the second year you just start to see the blaeberry just regrowing, kind of an inch or 2, and now sort of 3-4 years later it's in leaf and it's going to flower, it's going to have berries, it's kind of getting to a really good stage for Capercaillie. I think this is good. This is going to help Capercaillie. We're pretty sure about that. We've seen some good broods in here. It's really good brood habitat for Capercaillie, but we see it as a bit of a sticking plaster measure. It's quite heavy work. It's expensive. It's a diesel machine. It's producing carbon, but also the impact on the forest is very it's either cut or it's not cut. Whereas with the cattle grazing, it's a lot more intricate, it's more detailed. You have areas of different types of impact that benefit different species. Something we're looking at is kind of combining the 2 approaches. So we actually come to an area like this, we do a cut, we reinvigorate the field layer, we get the blaeberry growing, and then a few years later we put the cattle in, on top of that, and then they maintain that habitat. So long term that could be a more sustainable way to help Capercaillie here. It's really cool. It's what it's all about in conservation for us. Is particularly species that are struggling in the wider environment. It's to find the solutions and figure out what do they need. How can we help them? Sometimes it can be hard to get the funding. It can be hard to get support for what you need to do. But when you do manage to go ahead with something, and then a few years down the line you start to see that response, that's what it's all about. Really, it's really great.